Hi, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Laurel. I'm Laurel, and in this video we're going to talk about gross earnings. Everyone wants to be paid for the work that they do, so it's important that you understand how your earnings are calculated so that you can check whether anything has been missed. Gross earnings is the money you earned before any deductions are taken off your paycheck. And the way you calculate it is you add up a number of things: the regular earnings, overtime earnings, holiday earnings if there was a stat holiday in that pay period, plus stat holiday worked earnings if you happen to work on that stat holiday. There are different ways that people are paid or receive regular earnings. It could be an hourly rate, it could be an annual salary, it could be commission, and there's different types of commissions, or it could be piecework. So we'll take a look at a variety of examples just to see the different situations that people might encounter when calculating their total earnings. First example says Sammy receives an annual salary of $42,500 based on a 37.5 hour work week. What are his gross earnings for a 2-week pay period in which he works 12 hours of overtime at 1.5 times his regular rate of pay? So let's first of all find out, if he's paid $42,500 in a year, what does that equal in terms of a weekly pay rate? In order to calculate weekly pay, we're going to take the annual pay of $42,500 and divide by the number of weeks in a year, 52, and that gives our weekly pay of $817.31. We also need to know hourly pay because Sammy worked some overtime hours. In order to calculate hourly pay, we're going to take the weekly pay of $817.31 and divide by 37.5 hours in a work week. So the hourly rate is $21.79. Now let's calculate Sammy's total earnings. I want to point out that I'm writing these values down and I've rounded off to 2 decimal places. But when I'm doing the calculations, I'm using the actual values that are on my calculator. In this particular example, to figure out the gross earnings, we only have to worry about the regular pay and overtime pay. We know what the regular pay is for Sammy per week, but we need to know what the overtime pay is for Sammy per hour. So we take our regular pay per hour and multiply it by 1.5 times. So if we take $21.79 and multiply by 1.5, we get overtime pay of $32.69 per hour. In order to calculate what the earnings were for the regular work week, we can take the amount per week of $817.31 and multiply by the number of weeks, which was 2. In order to calculate the overtime earnings, we're going to take the overtime rate, which is per hour, of $32.69, and multiply by the number of hours worked at overtime, which was 12, for a total of $2,026.92. Our next example says Katie packs t-shirts for an online clothing supplier. She is paid $15 an hour plus 50 cents per package in excess of 200 packages in a 7.5 hour shift. How much will she earn if she packs 30 packages per hour? This question is an example of piecework pay. So this employee is getting regular pay in addition to piecework pay, which is a rate per piece times the number of pieces, but only if it's in excess of a certain amount in a certain time period. So figuring our regular pay is fairly straightforward. We take the rate of $15 per hour and multiply by the number of hours in a day, 7.5. The piecework pay is 50 cents. We have to change that to dollars. So 50 cents times the number of packages in excess of 200 packages in that shift. So if she's working at a rate of 30 per hour and she's working for 7.5 hours, in a day she should be packaging 225. So in order to find how many in excess of 200, we're just going to subtract 200. So she'll get paid extra on those 25. So we multiply 25 times 50 cents. So Katie would receive $112.50 with her regular pay, and in addition to that, she would receive $12.50 for the extra packages she was able to produce that day. Her total daily pay is therefore $125. Our next example says an appliance salesperson is paid the greater of $800 per week or 8% of sales. So this would be their salary, $800 per week if sales weren't great, but if sales were great, they're going to be paid a commission, and that would be 8% of whatever that total sales number is. The first part says, what are her earnings for a week in which the sales are $9,500? Let's see what the commission would be on that amount of sales. Commission is 8%, so we're going to take 8% of $9,500, and that amount is $760. So in this week, the salesperson would be paid $800 because the commission is less than that. The next part of the question says, at what volume of sales per week will she start to earn more from the commission-based compensation than this $800? The way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to let X be the total sales for the week. And so 8% of the total sales will be 0.08 times X. When will that equal 800? Divide both sides by 0.08. That isolates the X. So X will equal 800 divided by 0.08. And that amount works out to be $10,000. So if any sales under $10,000, this salesperson will only receive $800 per week. Anything above that amount, then they'll be paid commission, which is 8% of whatever the sales are. Often with commission, people are paid salary plus commission. So let's take a look at this next example. A salesperson receives a monthly salary of $2,400 plus a 2.5% commission on sales exceeding his quota of $160,000 per month. What are his earnings for a month in which he has $200,000 in sales? So this isn't either salary or commission like the last example. This is going to be salary plus a commission. So the salary for a month is $2,400. And we need to calculate how much is paid in commission. So anything over $160,000 a month, so we have to find that difference. So $200,000 minus $160,000. So that's the amount that exceeds his quota, and that amount gets multiplied by 2.5%. So as a decimal, 2.5% is 0.025. The amount in excess is $40,000. So we take 2.5% of $40,000. That's equal to $1,000. So the total earnings for that month will be $3,400. Our last example says Kelly works in retail and receives a base salary of $400 per week, plus a commission of 4% on sales exceeding their quota of $15,000 per week. What are their sales in a week in which they earn $850? So in this example, we're not told the sales per week. We're instead told what Kelly earns in a week. So the earnings are $850. The salary is $400. And the commission is 4% of anything in excess of $15,000 per week. We're going to call that X. Let's solve for X by subtracting 400 from both sides. So 850 minus 400 will be 450. Now we're going to divide both sides by 0.04. 450 divided by 0.04 is 11,250. Now remember, this is the amount sold in excess of 15,000. So total sales will be 15,000 plus 11,250. So Kelly must have had $26,250 total sales in order to earn $450 commission, or in other words, to earn $850 for that week. So it's important for you to understand how you're getting paid and to crunch the numbers to make sure there aren't any mistakes being made when you get your paycheck.